What if everything you were taught about the beginning of civilization was a lie designed to keep you from your true power? Why has history spent thousands of years trying to erase the memory of the women who ruled the world before the first pharaoh even drew a breath? Tonight we dive into the Forbidden Queen, the Black Matriarch of the Green Sahara. We are uncovering a world of celestial architects, obsidian scepters, and a sovereignty born of blood and stars that the modern world is terrified you'll remember. This isn't just a story about the past, it's a revelation about your own DNA and the secret heartbeat of a continent that was never dark, but blinded by its own light. Changing the way you see the past is the first step to reclaiming your future. If you are ready to hear the secrets the desert tried to bury, subscribe now, hit that like button and let us know in the comments. From which part of the world are you listening to this ancestral awakening? Imagine a time when the gold of the dunes was actually a sea of tall grass, swaying under a sky that felt much closer to the earth. The air wasn't parched or lifeless, but heavy with the scent of fresh rain and the constant melody of rivers snaking through places where silence now reigns supreme. It's funny how official history loves to skip this part, treating the Sahara like some geographical mistake, when it was actually the vibrant stage for a world experts find it more convenient to ignore. Amidst the trunks of colossal trees and the rustle of abundant wildlife, something far deeper was in motion. These weren't just hunters tracking prey. These were a people who read the stars as if they were a map of home. They didn't see nature as something to be tamed, but as an extension of their own souls, protected by a presence no man dared to challenge. It was the Empire of Harmony, where every footprint on the soil was a ritual of gratitude. The revelation, however, didn't lie in massive stone monuments, but in the whisper of the waters that nourished the minds of those ancestors. While the rest of humanity was still figuring out how to rub sticks together for a spark, this culture already understood the cycles of life and the laws governing the cosmos. It's a tightly guarded secret that sophistication didn't start in marble palaces, but under the shade of giant acacias, guided by a voice that didn't need to shout to be obeyed. This spiritual connection wasn't a choice, it was their oxygen. They knew the earth was a living organism, and that the matriarch who walked among them was the direct link to the divine. Ironically, today's skeptics call this folklore, yet they can't explain the technical precision and social peace of a world that didn't need walls. Wisdom flowed like mother's milk, ensuring that knowledge never died. It only transformed into something more subtle. But this perfect harmony hid a prophecy that the waters were already beginning to reflect in their shallowing surfaces. The green was starting to fade, and the matriarch knew the time for ruling in the sunlight was drawing to a close. What was about to be buried wasn't just trees and rivers, but the very structure of a power that the world would never see so pure again. It was there, among the last shadows of the green, that the stones began to speak. Long before the first stone was laid for the Great Pyramid, a group of stargazers was busy etching the heavens onto the dust of the earth. In a place called Nabta Playa, these ancestors didn't just look up in awe, they calculated the tilt of the universe with a precision that makes modern tech look like a set of wooden blocks. It's almost adorable how mainstream history pretends that complex math only arrived with the Greeks, while these primitive people were already synchronizing their lives with the heartbeat of the stars. The mystery deepens when you realize these weren't just random rocks scattered in the sand. This was a stone circle, a celestial clock designed to track the arrival of the summer solstice and the movement of Orion. But here's the kicker. They weren't just tracking time. They were welcoming the spirit of the Great Mother back to the land. The stones acted as a bridge between the cosmic womb and the physical world, a secret frequency that only the initiated could hear. Walking through these monoliths was a journey through the very anatomy of the divine. Each stone was placed with a ritualistic intent, vibrating with the energy of a people who knew that, as above, so below, wasn't just a catchy phrase, but a survival strategy. They were building a map for the soul, ensuring that even if the world around them withered, the path back to the source would remain etched in the landscape, hidden in plain sight from those who only see with their eyes. Spiritually, this wasn't about religion, it was about alignment. The matriarch oversaw these alignments, ensuring the community's energy mirrored the balance of the constellations. They understood that when the stars shifted, the human heart had to shift with them. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? We have GPS today and still manage to get lost, while they had a few upright stones and never lost their way in the vastness of the infinite. But as the stars moved into new houses, a tension began to ripple through the sacred circle. The heavens were whispering about a coming darkness, a shift that would move the center of power from the nurturing stars to the scorching sun. The stones began to cast longer, colder shadows, signaling that the age of the celestial architects was being threatened by a new, more aggressive force. The secret was about to go underground, literally. Before gold became the obsession of kings, there was obsidian, a glass born of volcanic fire and the cooling breath of the earth. This wasn't just a tool, it was the Black Matriarch's own shadow frozen in time, shaped into a scepter that hummed with a power most modern leaders couldn't handle. It's funny, really, how we're taught that the age of man began with the sword, conveniently forgetting the era when a dark glass rod held the world together through nothing but spiritual authority. The scepter wasn't used to command armies, but to command the elements themselves. Legend whispers that when the matriarch touched the dry earth with that obsidian tip, the hidden veins of water would pulse in response, as if the ground recognized its rightful owner. This was the original divine right, but it didn't come from a crown. It came from the blood. It's a bit of a slap in the face to the history books that want us to believe power has always been about who can scream the loudest or kill the most. To hold the scepter was to undergo a journey of total ego death. The matriarch would spend nights in the deep silence of quartz caverns, letting the obsidian absorb her fears until she became a hollow vessel for the earth's wisdom. The ritual was a delicate dance between the heat of creation and the coldness of judgment, a balance that ensured the tribe never took more than it gave. It was a culture built on the radical idea that the leader is the servant of the cycle, not its master. Spiritually, this artifact was the physical anchor of the matrilineal soul. It represented the umbilicus mundi, the cord that tied every living member of the tribe back to the first mother. When the scepter was raised, it wasn't a call to war, but a call to remember. In a world today that is obsessed with finding itself, it's almost tragic to think we once possessed a literal compass that pointed straight to our collective origin, kept safe in the hands of a woman the world decided to forget. But even the strongest glass can be shattered or worse, stolen. As the climate turned harsh and resources grew thin, the soft hum of the obsidian began to be drowned out by the clashing of bronze. The conflict wasn't just over land, but over the very definition of power. Would it remain a nurturing dark glass or become a sharp, cold metal? The scepter began to feel heavier in the matriarch's hand, a sign that the age of the womb was being challenged by the age of the fist. In the world before the patriarchs drew their borders, your name wasn't a gift from your father. It was a sacred echo of your mother's lineage. Property, wisdom, and the very right to exist were passed down through the blood of the daughters, creating a chain of continuity that stretched back to the beginning of time. It's quite the irony that modern society spent centuries trying to give women rights that they actually held as an absolute birthright, before history decided to rewrite the rules. The mystery of this lineage lay in the belief that the soul didn't just appear out of nowhere. It traveled through the female line like a river through a canyon. To know your mother's mother was to know your own destiny, a spiritual map encoded in the very cells of your body. These ancestors didn't see the family tree as a ladder to climb, but as a circle to expand, where every woman was a pillar holding up the roof of the world. It's a secret that the fathers of history worked very hard to bury under piles of dusty genealogies. This journey of blood was celebrated with rituals that would make modern ceremonies look like mere theater. When a young girl reached the threshold of womanhood, she wasn't just growing up, she was being activated as a guardian of the ancestral memory. They used oils and resins that smelled of the deep earth to mark the skin, signaling to the spirit world that another link in the chain was ready to hold the weight of the past. It was a culture that understood that if you break the mother line, you lose the soul of the nation. On a spiritual level, this system was the ultimate insurance policy against chaos. Since power was tied to the act of giving life rather than taking it, the leadership remained rooted in the preservation of the future. The matriarch wasn't a queen because of a crown. but because she was the oldest living memory of the tribe. It's funny how we now look for leadership qualities in seminars and books, when for thousands of years it was simply understood that those who give life are the ones best suited to protect it. Yet a shadow was creeping toward the hearth of these matriarchal homes. New philosophies were arriving with the wind, foreign ideas that claimed a man's strength was more valuable than a woman's legacy. This wasn't just a change in politics, it was a spiritual hijacking. The daughters of the black matriarch began to sense a coldness in the air, a sign that the very blood that gave them power was about to be redefined as a weakness by those who couldn't control it. High above the encroaching sands, on the plateau of Tassili Naja, the ancestors left a gallery that the modern world is still too sophisticated to understand. These aren't just doodles on a wall, they are vivid snapshots of a reality where humans and gods walked the same grass. Thousands of paintings depict figures of immense scale, wearing suits that look suspiciously like what we'd call astronaut gear today. It's hilarious how historians label these as abstract art, just to avoid admitting that our ancestors were seeing things we've completely forgotten how to look for. The mystery deepens when you gaze upon the great gods painted in those caves, monolithic beings with rounded heads and no facial features, looming over the everyday scenes of life. These weren't figments of a starved imagination. They were the watchers who counseled the matriarch. The walls reveal a world where the veil between dimensions was as thin as a leaf, and communication with higher intelligences was a standard Tuesday afternoon. It's a secret etched in stone that suggests our primitive predecessors were far more connected to the cosmos than we are with our fiber optics. For those who lived in the shadow of these cliffs, the act of painting was a spiritual tethering. They weren't just recording history, they were trapping the essence of the divine in the pigment. Every stroke of ochre and charcoal was a prayer to keep the portal open, a desperate attempt to freeze a golden age before the climate and the new gods turned it to dust. They lived in a multisensory explosion of color and spirit, where the smell of rain on stone was the breath of the Creator herself. Spiritually, these paintings served as a library for the soul. In a time without books, the matriarch would lead the young to these high galleries to show them where they came from and what they could become. They were taught that they were descendants of the stars, temporary guests on a living Earth. It's a bit ironic that we spend billions on space telescopes to find what these people were simply painting on their bedroom walls 10,000 years ago. But as the air grew thinner and the green began to retreat from the plateau, the figures in the paintings started to change. The peaceful giants were joined by scenes of archers and conflict, the first signs that the age of the goddess was under siege. The silent stone witnesses began to record a shift from cosmic communion to earthly struggle. The rock art was no longer just a celebration. It was becoming a frantic archive of a world that was about to be swallowed by the sun. South of the cataracts in the rugged lands of Kush, the echoes of the black matriarch didn't just fade. They hardened into gold and iron. Long before the world fixated on the male-dominated courts of Europe, the Nubian queens, the Candaces, were ruling with a ferocity that made even the Roman Empire blink in disbelief. It's almost comical how history books treat these women as a footnote or a regional anomaly, when in reality, they were the last standing fortress of an ancient power structure that the Mediterranean world was trying desperately to kill off. The secret of Kush wasn't just its wealth, but its refusal to let the female soul be domesticated. In the heart of Meroe, the queens weren't just figureheads. They were high priestesses and battlefield commanders, often depicted in stone with broader shoulders and more commanding presence than any king. They held the key to the temples of Amun, acting as the bridge between the people and the divine. It was a society where a woman's power was so absolute that it terrified the civilized world, leading them to describe these queens as monsters or myths. To step into a Nubian temple was to enter a sensory sanctuary of incense and authority. The air was thick with the scent of burning myrrh, and the walls were covered in reliefs showing queens smiting their enemies with the same grace they used to offer milk to the gods. This wasn't a struggle for equality. It was the natural order of a world that remembered the matriarch. They didn't need permission to lead. They were born from the very earth that demanded their leadership, carrying the weight of the ancestors in every gold-encrusted step. On a spiritual level, Kush was the guardian of the original mysteries that Egypt would eventually dilute for its own political gains. While the north began to center everything around the pharaonic ego, the south kept the focus on the lineage of the mother. They understood that a king was only legitimate if a woman birthed his authority. It's a bit of a cosmic joke that we look to the north for wisdom, when the north was actually looking south to find the source of its own soul. But even the granite of Nubia couldn't stop the tide of change forever. As foreign religions began to seep across the borders, they brought with them a new kind of holy order, one that viewed a woman on a throne as an affront to heaven. The conflict wasn't just about territory, it was a battle for the very spirit of the Nile. The great queens began to prepare for a long winter, knowing that while their cities might fall, the secret of their sovereignty was hidden in a place no invader could ever reach. Before the serpent was twisted into a symbol of evil by desert religions, it was the most sacred confidant of the Black Matriarch. This wasn't a creature of sin, but a living bridge between the roots of the earth and the heat of the sun. The snake represented the kundalini of the soil, the winding path of DNA, and the infinite cycle of shedding the old to reveal the new. It's quite ironic that a symbol of ultimate wisdom and healing was rebranded as a villain just because it represented a power that couldn't be controlled by a pulpit. The mystery lay in the serpent's breath, a deep knowledge of pharmacology and botany that the matriarchal lineages guarded like a treasure. They didn't just find medicine, they spoke to the plants, understanding the chemical soul of the acacia and the lotus. It was a time when a priestess could heal a fever or induce a prophetic trance with a single leaf, acting as a biological mediator for her people. This secret science was so advanced that modern Big Pharma is still playing catch-up with the compounds these women were mixing in clay pots 10 millennia ago. To undergo the ritual of the serpent was to face one's own mortality and emerge transformed. In the damp darkness of sacred groves, the initiate would learn to move with the rhythm of the earth, shed their ego like a dead skin, and tap into the earth currents that flow beneath our feet. The air would be thick with the smell of crushed herbs and damp soil, a sensory overload designed to break the mind and wake the spirit. They weren't looking for a god in the clouds, they were finding the goddess in the dirt. Spiritually, the serpent was the guardian of the earth's memory. Since the snake never leaves the ground, it hears the whispers of everyone who has ever lived and died. By aligning with this energy, the matriarch ensured that the community never lost its way. She was the snake charmer of the soul, keeping the balance between the wild instincts of the animal and the high aspirations of the spirit. It's a bit funny that we now fear the very creature that once symbolized our deepest connection to the planet's intelligence. But a new wind was blowing, bringing with it a sky god who demanded that the serpent be crushed under a heel. This shift marked the moment when humanity began to fear the earth instead of loving it. As the temples of the snake were torn down, the matriarch saw the wisdom being labeled as witchcraft and the healers being called hags. The serpent didn't disappear, though. It simply retreated into the tall grass, waiting for a time when the world would again be hungry for the truth that lies in the shadows. Long before the world's great civilizations decided to stack stones for their own glory, the matriarch's architects were placing monoliths with the precision of a master watchmaker. These weren't just heavy rocks, they were acupuncture needles for the planet, placed on specific ley lines where the Earth's energy was most potent. It's almost a joke how modern science looks at these sites and sees primitive tomb markers, completely missing the fact that these stones were vibrating in harmony with the lunar cycles and the shifting tides of the crust. The mystery of these megaliths lies in their voice. Ancient legends tell of stones that would hum when the moon reached its zenith, a low-frequency resonance that could heal the body or sharpen the mind. This was a technology of sound and stone, a way to anchor the celestial power of the stars into the very bedrock of Africa. It's a secret that the Age of Reason tried to bury under the label of superstition, terrified of the idea that stones could hold memory and transmit power to those who knew how to listen. To stand among these giants during a solstice was a sensory immersion unlike any other. The air would feel thick, charged with static electricity, as the sun aligned perfectly with the stone's axis, casting a shadow that pointed toward the tribe's future. The The scent of ozone would fill the air and the ground would literally tremble with a rhythmic pulse, the heartbeat of the mother. They weren't just building monuments. They were building a collective nervous system for the entire community, connected to the pulse of the universe. Spiritually, these stone circles were the courts of the mothers. Here, the matriarch would sit to settle disputes, not with a gavel, but by letting the stone's neutrality absorb the human friction. They believed that the silence of the rock was the ultimate truth-teller. If you couldn't speak your heart in the presence of the ancient stones, you weren't fit to speak at all. It's a bit ironic that we now settle our differences in sterile courtrooms, having lost the grounding influence of the Earth's own bones. But as the social order began to fracture, these stones became targets. Invaders and new leaders realized that to break the people, they had to break the stones, or at least the connection to them. Some were toppled, others were built over, and the heartbeat was silenced by the noise of progress. The stones didn't lose their power, though. They simply went dormant. They are still there, hidden under the sand or disguised as rubble, waiting for a generation that can handle the weight of their silence. Moving on to topic 9, red ochre and the pigment of the primordial womb. Before the world became obsessed with the sterile shine of gold, the true color of power was red. Not the red of war, but the deep, earthy crimson of iron-rich ochre. This wasn't just a color, it was the literal essence of the Earth's blood, mined from the deepest veins of the continent to honor the giver of life. It's quite ironic that modern art history treats these early pigments as primitive decor, when they were actually the first spiritual language of humanity, used to mark the transition from the physical to the eternal. The mystery of red ochre lies in its consistency across thousands of years and thousands of miles. From the Blombos cave to the heights of the Rift Valley, the matriarch's followers used it to coat the bones of the dead and the skin of the living. This wasn't a choice, it was a biological mandate. They believed that by painting themselves in the color of the womb, they remained under the protection of the Great Mother, even beyond the grave. It's a secret that suggests a unified global spirituality existed long before the organized religions claimed to have invented it. The ritual of the crimson baptism was a sensory explosion. The air would be filled with the metallic scent of crushed hematite and the musky aroma of animal fats used as a binder. As the sun set, the initiates would emerge from the darkness of a cave, their bodies glowing like embers in the twilight, looking less like humans and more like gods carved from the earth itself. This was the original rebirth, a visual and tactile reminder that we are made of the same clay that birthed the mountains. Spiritually, ochre was the anchor of the soul. In a world that was becoming increasingly unpredictable, the red pigment offered a sense of permanence. It represented the unbroken line, the blood that flows from mother to child, connecting the very first woman to the very last. It's a bit of a slap in the face to our modern plastic world to realize that our ancestors found more divinity in a handful of red dust than we find in all our digital cathedrals. They knew that to be sacred was to be earthed. But as the age of iron approached, red began to lose its connection to the womb and started to be associated with the blade. The pigment of life was being co-opted by the gods of the hunt and the kings of conquest. The matriarch watched as her sacred ochre was washed away by the tides of a new, colder era, where blood was something to be spilled rather than celebrated. Yet even today, in the remote corners of the continent, the red skin of the Himba and others remains. A silent, stubborn ghost of a matriarchy that refuses to be erased. For thousands of years, the north was a lush, humid paradise, but the climate had a different plan. A slow, scorching betrayal that changed the course of human destiny. As the monsoons shifted and the green Sahara began to crack under an unrelenting sun, the lakes vanished and the vibrant savannas turned to dust. It's almost laughable how we call this natural evolution, ignoring the fact that it was the greatest refugee crisis in history, forcing the matriarch's followers to abandon their gardens for the narrow, crowded life of the Nile Valley. The mystery of this great drying out isn't just about weather, it's about what was lost in the scramble for survival. In the green world, power was decentralized and fluid, but the desert acted like a giant funnel, pushing everyone toward the few remaining water sources. It's a secret that historians rarely mention. The desert didn't just create the sand, it created the strong man. When water becomes a luxury, the nurturing hand of the mother is often pushed aside by the iron fist of the man who can guard the well. This journey out of the fading Eden was a sensory nightmare of heat and thirst. The smell of blooming jasmine was replaced by the acrid scent of parched earth and the stinging grit of sandstorms that could strip the skin from bone. The matriarch led her people across the expanding dunes, carrying the sacred seeds and the obsidian scepter, her eyes fixed on the horizon as the world behind her literally evaporated. This was the fall that the later scriptures would talk about, not a sin of a woman, but a tragedy of the earth. Spiritually, this exile was a test of the soul's resilience. The ancestors had to learn how to keep the inner green alive, while the outer world was dying. They began to build temples that mimicked the lost forests, columns shaped like bundles of papyrus and ceilings painted with the stars they used to sleep under. It's a bit ironic that we look at the monumental architecture of the later dynasties and see greatness when it was actually a desperate, beautiful attempt to recreate a home that the sun had stolen from them. But as they settled into the river valleys, the social fabric began to tear under the pressure of the crowd. The hierarchy that was once built on wisdom was being replaced by a hierarchy of ownership. The matriarch saw the first fences being built, the first taxes being collected, and the first whispers that perhaps a woman's softness wasn't enough to handle the new, harsh reality. The stage was being set for a coup d'état of the spirit, where the queen would soon find herself standing in the shadow of a king. When the new kings finally took their seats on the thrones of the Nile, they realized that to stay there, they had to delete the memory of who built the house. They began a systematic cleansing of the records, etching over the names of the great matriarchs and replacing them with their own masculine titles. It's almost a joke how we treat these king lists as absolute truth, when they are essentially the most successful propaganda campaign in human history, designed to make us believe that civilization was a male invention from day one. The mystery lies in the ghost queens who still haunt the margins of the stone walls. In the deepest chambers of early mastabas, researchers find feminine titles that don't fit the official narrative. Titles like The One Who Sees the Gods or The Pillar of the Two Lands. These were the remnants of the black matriarch's authority, kept in the shadows because the new rulers knew they couldn't completely kill the people's devotion to the mother. It's a secret hidden in plain sight. Every First Dynasty king was likely just a son or a husband trying to legitimize himself through a woman's bloodline. To witness this erasure was a silent, cultural tragedy. Imagine the sound of chisels hitting stone, day after day, scraping away the curves of a woman's silhouette to make room for the sharp angles of a pharaoh's beard. The air in the workshops was thick with the dust of destroyed history, a sensory reminder that the past is only as permanent as the man with the hammer. They weren't just changing names, they were changing the vibration of the culture, shifting it from the harmony of the womb to the ego of the monument. Spiritually, this was the first great forgetting. By removing the mother from the stone, they began to remove her from the collective subconscious. The people were taught to look at the pharaoh as a god on earth, while the true source of that divinity, the matrilineal connection to the stars, was relegated to myth or domestic ritual. It's a bit ironic that we now dig through the sand looking for lost civilizations when the most important one was never lost. It was simply painted over by those who feared its return. But the stones have a way of remembering what the historians tried to forget. Underneath the layers of royal propaganda, the older, deeper reliefs still pulse with a different energy. The conflict between the recorded truth and the architectural feeling creates a tension that even the most skeptical archaeologist can sense. The matriarch's name might have been chiseled away, but her presence remains in the very geometry of the temples, a silent, stubborn foundation that refuses to let the lies rest in peace. Centuries after the Great Erasure, a name still managed to pierce through the thick fog of patriarchal history: Makeda, the Queen of Sheba. While the world tries to paint her as a mere romantic footnote in the story of King Solomon, the truth is far more inconvenient for the status quo. She wasn't just a visitor, she was the sovereign of a sprawling trade empire that linked the highlands of Ethiopia to the spice routes of Arabia. It's almost laughable how historians try to locate her kingdom everywhere but Africa, as if the idea of a black woman holding the keys to the world's economy is a pill too bitter to swallow. The mystery of Makeda lies in her questions. The biblical texts claim she went to Solomon to test him with hard riddles, but in the older, deeper traditions, this was a diplomatic showdown between two worldviews. She represented the ancient southern wisdom, the logic of the earth and the spirit, while he represented the new northern logic of law and architecture. It's a secret that the Queen's riddles were actually a coded assessment to see if the new kings of the north were still fit to guard the mysteries of the Ark. Walking into Makeda's court was a sensory overload of wealth and authority that didn't rely on brute force. Imagine the scent of frankincense and myrrh so thick it felt like a physical presence, and the sight of gold not as a currency, but as a reflection of the sun's light on skin. This was the last matriarchy in its full, defiant glory. A culture where the Queen's word was the law because her spirit was aligned with the ancient heartbeat of the continent. She didn't come to Solomon to learn, she came to see if he was worth her time. Spiritually, Sheba represents the soul's resistance. Even as the world around her moved toward the worship of the single male deity, she maintained the balance of the matriarchal rites. She was the bridge that allowed the ancient Sophia, the feminine wisdom, to survive within the structures of the new religions. It's a bit of a cosmic joke that the very line of kings she supposedly started in Ethiopia would eventually become one of the most patriarchal on earth, effectively burying the very power that gave her the throne in the first place. But as the legend of the Queen of the South grew, the real woman was slowly turned into a myth to make her less dangerous. They focused on her beauty or her submission rather than her intellect or her armies. Yet, even today, when you walk through the ruins of Aksum or the stone churches of Lalibela, there's a lingering vibration, a feminine shadow that doesn't belong to any saint. It's the ghost of a sovereignty that never truly surrendered, a sign that the matriarch's blood was still flowing, even if it had to go deeper into the mountains to survive. Long before modern science discovered that quartz crystals could store data and regulate frequency, the matriarch's inner circle was using the very bones of the earth as a spiritual hard drive. Deep within the hidden caverns of the Transvaal and the Saharan Shields, there are chambers lined with natural crystal that were once the laboratories of the soul. It's almost a joke how we treat crystal healing as a modern New Age fad, while ignoring the evidence that our ancestors were using georesonance to harmonize the human nervous system with the planet's magnetic field. The mystery of these caves lies in the singing stones. Legend says that a priestess could strike a specific tone with her voice, and the entire cavern would begin to vibrate at a frequency that could induce cellular repair or out-of-body experiences. This wasn't magic. It was an advanced understanding of acoustic physics. It's a secret that suggests the matriarchs didn't just rule through social order, but through the mastery of the unseen vibrations that hold reality together, a power that made them appear as gods to the uninitiated. Stepping into these chambers was a total sensory surrender. The air was cool and tasted of ozone, and the silence was so heavy it felt like a physical weight against the eardrums. When the ritual began, the low hum of the quartz would resonate in the very marrow of your bones, making the skin tingle as if touched by 1,000 invisible fingers. This was the original sanctuary, a place where the static of the world was stripped away, leaving only the pure, rhythmic pulse of the Earth's own consciousness. Spiritually, the quartz caves were the libraries of light. The matriarchs believed that the crystals recorded every thought and every prayer offered within their walls, creating a permanent archive of ancestral wisdom. They weren't looking for knowledge in books, they were downloading it from the stone. It's a bit ironic that we now carry quartz in our smartphones to connect to the internet, while our ancestors used it to connect to the infinite, proving that the more we advance, the more we settle for the smaller version of the truth. But as the secret locations of these caves were lost to time, or intentionally sealed to protect them from invaders, the vibration of the world began to change. The harmony was replaced by the chaotic noise of iron and industry, and the ability to hear the Earth's heartbeat became a rare, forgotten gift. The caves are still there, though, buried under layers of sediment and guarded by the silence of the desert. They are waiting for a frequency that matches their own, a sign that the Queen's children are finally ready to listen again. In the sterile halls of modern laboratories, scientists stumbled upon a truth that the ancient matriarchs had been whispering for eons. They found a genetic ghost, a single woman from whom every human being on this planet is descended, the mitochondrial Eve. It's quite a delicious irony that after centuries of trying to prove that the founding fathers built the world, biology stepped in to remind us that we all carry the literal spark of a black mother in our cells. They call it a scientific discovery, but for the children of the matriarch, it's just the DNA finally admitting what the spirit always knew. The mystery isn't just that she existed, but where she lived, the lush wetlands of southern Africa, a place that was once a cradle of unparalleled abundance. This wasn't a primitive ancestor wandering aimlessly. She was the original sovereign of the human experience. The secret lies in the fact that mitochondrial DNA is passed down only through the female line, an unbreakable chain of life that bypasses the father entirely. It's as if the universe itself built a vault that no patriarch could ever tamper with, ensuring the Queen's signature stayed on the blueprint of humanity. Imagine the sensory reality of that first Eden, the smell of damp earth and blooming proteas, the sound of a language that was more like music than speech. To be in her presence was to be at the center of the world's original heartbeat. She was the one who first named the plants, who first understood the cycles of the moon, and who first taught her children that they were woven from the same fabric as the stars. This wasn't a struggle for survival, it was the ultimate mastery of being, a sensory harmony we've spent thousands of years trying to claw back. Spiritually, this genetic link is the eternal thread. It means that no matter how much the history books try to erase the Black Matriarch, she is literally living inside the person reading those books. We are the walking, talking monuments to her existence. It's a bit of a cosmic joke that we build massive statues of men who conquered lands, while the woman who actually populated the earth is hidden in the very microscopic building blocks of our bodies. She doesn't need a monument. She has us. But even this ultimate proof is often twisted. The official narrative tries to strip her of her majesty, calling her a biological fluke, rather than the architect of a lineage. They want us to believe that her power was accidental, not intentional. Yet, as more people begin to look inward and trace their roots back to that African soil, the mitochondrial ghost is starting to feel less like a ghost and more like a presence. The chain is still intact, and the Queen is starting to wake up in the blood of her descendants. Deep in the cliffs of Mali, the Dogon people guard a secret that makes modern astronomers very, very uncomfortable. Long before telescopes were a thing, this tribe possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, including a white dwarf star that is invisible to the naked eye. It's almost a joke how Western scientists spent decades dismissing this as lucky guessing, only to have their own high-tech satellites confirm every single detail. They call it a mystery. The Dogon just call it their mother's history, passed down from the days when the Nomo spirits descended to teach the matriarch the laws of the sky. The mystery lies in the source of this data. The Dogon don't claim to have invented the math. They claim to have remembered it. They speak of an era when the Black Matriarch held a direct communion of the mind with celestial visitors, a time when the earth and the stars were part of the same neighborhood. This wasn't a religion of faith, but a science of observation and connection. It's a secret that suggests the Dark Continent was actually the world's first space observatory, plugged into a cosmic network that the rest of the world has forgotten how to access. To enter a Dogon village is to step into a living diagram of the universe. The very layout of their homes and granaries mirrors the anatomy of the human body and the structure of the stars. The air is filled with the scent of dry earth and ancient dust, while the visual geometry of their masks and carvings tells a story of biological engineering from the stars. This is a sensory-coded library where every pattern on a piece of cloth is a mathematical formula, a visual whisper from an era when we didn't just look at the stars, we listened to them. Spiritually, the Dogon connection is the cosmic anchor. It proves that the matriarchal wisdom wasn't just local or primitive, but universal. They understood that human life is an extension of stellar life, governed by the same rhythms and frequencies. It's a bit of a slap in the face to our modern ego to realize that while we're busy trying to colonize Mars, these ancestors were already having a conversation with Sirius B from the comfort of a cliffside in West Africa. They knew that to go out, you first had to go in. But as the world outside the cliffs became obsessed with discovery through destruction, the Dogon drew a veil over their most sacred truths. The conflict shifted from sharing knowledge to protecting it from those who would treat it as a curiosity rather than a responsibility. The matriarchal line of astronomers went underground, hiding the keys to the stars in oral traditions and complex dances. The stars haven't moved, and the secrets haven't changed. We've just lost the frequency to hear the music they've been playing all along. In the height of the matriarch's reign, authority wasn't worn as a heavy metal crown, but as a living mask of the leopard and the lioness. These weren't just costumes for a village play, they were biological conduits, designed to allow the priestess to shed her human limitations and channel the raw, predatory intelligence of nature's top hunters. It's almost comical how modern fashion houses steal these animal prints for aesthetic appeal, completely oblivious to the fact that for our ancestors, these patterns were sacred blueprints of survival and spiritual dominance. The mystery lies in the shifting. Ancient oral traditions describe the great matriarchs as having the ability to see in the dark, not just physically, but spiritually. By wearing the skin and the mask of the feline, they were tapping into a primordial frequency of focus and stealth. It was a secret technology of the soul that allowed the ruler to perceive the hidden intentions of others and the subtle shifts in the land's energy. It's a bit of a slap in the face to modern leadership body language courses to realize that the first queens were literally becoming the most perceptive creatures on the planet to ensure their people's safety. Imagine the sensory intensity of a cat moon ritual. The air is thick with the musk of animal skins and the sharp metallic tang of cold night air. The only light comes from low fires that make the spots on the leopard skin masks dance and shimmer, creating a visual hallucination of movement. The sound of a low guttural growl, produced by a friction drum, vibrates in the pit of your stomach, signaling that the matriarch has left her human ego behind. In that moment, she isn't a woman. She is the night eye, the guardian who sees what everyone else fears to look at. Spiritually, the feline avatar represented the balance of the claw. It was a reminder that the mother's love wasn't just soft and nurturing. It was also fierce and protective. The matriarch didn't rule through niceness, but through a deep, terrifying respect for the life force. She understood that to protect the garden, one must also be the predator that keeps the shadows in check. It's a bit ironic that we now view the feminine as purely delicate, having forgotten the era when the most powerful women were those who walked with the stride of a lioness. But as the social order shifted toward the king of the hunt, the meaning of the mask began to change. The feline power was no longer about spiritual perception. It was co-opted as a symbol of physical conquest and masculine bravado. The subtle shifting was replaced by a literal killing of the animal to prove strength. The matriarch watched as her sacred avatars were turned into trophies for the walls of men who knew how to kill a lion, but had no idea how to speak to its spirit. Yet the catwalk remains in the blood of the daughters, a silent, graceful threat that waits for the right moment to pounce. Long before the refined symbols of the pharaohs became world famous, there was the tayet, commonly known as the knot of Isis. But here's the irony that modern Egyptology often glosses over. This symbol didn't drop from the sky into a king's lap. It was a pre-dynastic signature of the matriarch's weaver priestesses. It represents the blood of the mother, a stylized knot of cloth that once secured the garments of the queens, who ruled the Nile before it was even called Egypt. It's funny how a symbol of feminine biological power was later sanitized into a mere charm for protection, as if the world couldn't handle its original raw meaning. The mystery of the knot lies in its shape, a loop and two arms that look suspiciously like the human uterus and fallopian tubes. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a sacred anatomical map. The secret was that the blood of Isis wasn't just a poetic phrase, it was a ritual understanding of the life force that resides in the female cycle. They believed that this knot held the universe together, a literal umbilical cord connecting the physical realm to the spiritual source. It's a bit of a slap in the face to our modern medicine that these women had mapped the seat of life with spiritual precision thousands of years ago. The ritual of the grand weaving was a sensory masterpiece. Imagine the rhythmic clack-clack of wooden looms, the air smelling of indigo and sun-dried linen. As the priestesses tied the sacred knots, they whispered incantations that were said to bind the chaos of the coming year. Each knot was a physical manifestation of a thought, a prayer, a law. To wear the tiet was to be physically anchored to the matriarch's authority, feeling the tug of the linen against your skin as a constant reminder that you were part of an unbroken web of life. Spiritually, the knot represented the sacred persistence. In a world that was beginning to value the sharp cutting edge of the blade, the knot offered the power of the tie, the ability to hold things together without destroying them. It was a philosophy of cohesion over conquest. The matriarch didn't need to chain her people. She simply knotted them into the social fabric through shared lineage and mutual respect. It's a bit ironic that we now live in such a disposable culture, having lost the art of the spiritual knot that makes a community unbreakable. But as the dynasties grew more rigid, the knot was taken from the living and given almost exclusively to the dead. It became a funerary amulet, a protection for the afterlife, rather than a blueprint for power in this one. The blood of the mother was hidden away in tombs, while the sword of the father took over the streets. Yet, the symbol remains carved into the oldest red jasper stones, a silent witness to a time when the most powerful thing you could do was not to strike, but to bind. As the shadow of the Roman Empire stretched across the Mediterranean, the legions of Caesar met a force they weren't prepared for in the sands of Nubia, the Candaces. These weren't the delicate princesses of European fairy tales. They were the Kandake queens, fierce matriarchs who led their own armies into the fray. It's almost comical how Roman historians tried to write them off as monstrous or unnatural, simply because one of these queens, Amanirenas, lost an eye in battle and still managed to force Augustus to negotiate for peace. They couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that the Black Matriarch wasn't a myth of the past, but a living, breathing threat to their global domination. The mystery of the Candaces lies in their endurance. While the rest of the ancient world was collapsing into patriarchal dynasties, the kingdom of Kush maintained a system where the Queen Mother was the ultimate kingmaker. The secret wasn't just in their iron weapons, but in their spiritual conviction that the land belonged to the female line. It's a bit of a slap in the face to modern feminist movements to realize that 2,000 years ago, there was a civilization where a woman's right to command was so absolute, she didn't even have to argue for it. She just picked up her bow and the world trembled. The sensory experience of a Nubian camp was a symphony of power. The air was thick with the scent of leather, sweat, and the sharp tang of iron being sharpened on stone. You would hear the low rhythmic chanting of war priestesses, their voices vibrating in harmony with the thud of 1,000-pound war elephants. The sight of a Kandake on her throne, adorned in massive gold pectorals and skin etched with ritual scars, was a visual declaration that the ancient sovereignty of the womb had found its fortress. They weren't just fighting for land, they were fighting to keep the age of the mother from being extinguished by the age of the emperor. Spiritually, these queens were the guardians of the gate. They knew that Kush was the final sanctuary for the old mysteries of the Green Sahara and the matrilineal soul. By standing their ground against Rome, they ensured that the African spirit remained unbowed, even as the world around them was being colonized by a different kind of logic. It's a bit ironic that we now study Roman law as the foundation of civilization, while the defiant, one-eyed queens who actually beat them are relegated to the exotic corners of history. But as the centuries wore on, the pressure of a changing world became too great. The trade routes shifted, and a new religion from the north began to preach a gospel where the head of every woman is man. The conflict was no longer just on the battlefield, it was in the hearts of the people. The Candaces didn't lose a war. They were simply outlasted by a world that was becoming increasingly afraid of the dark, powerful feminine. Yet, the ruins of their pyramids still point to the stars, a stone-cold reminder that there was once a kingdom where the Black Matriarch was both the shield and the sword. In the bustling markets of Lagos, the rhythmic ceremonies of Bahia, and the high-tech hubs of Nairobi, a ghost is starting to regain her flesh. After centuries of being told their history began with a slave ship or a colonial map, the daughters of the diaspora are beginning to feel a strange, familiar heat in their blood. It's almost a joke how social scientists try to analyze the rise of African female influence as a new phenomenon, completely failing to see that it's not an arrival. It's a retrieval. The black matriarch is simply tired of her long nap under the sand. The mystery of this reawakening isn't found in a political manifesto, but in the sudden remembering. It's that moment when a woman realizes her grandmother's superstitions were actually sophisticated spiritual technologies. The secret is that the matrilineal soul never actually died. It just went into a dormant state, like a seed waiting for the right frequency of rain. It's a bit of a slap in the face to the modernizing forces to see that the more they try to globalize the world, the more people return to the ancient tribal truths of the mother. To experience this return is a sensory homecoming. You smell it in the return to ancestral oils and herbs that the doctors once forbid. You see it in the defiant stance of women who no longer ask for a seat at the table because they remember their ancestors built the house. The sound isn't a scream for help, but the low, confident hum of the singing stones returning to the human throat. This is a multi-sensory revolution where the Black Queen isn't a costume for a music video, but a structural reality of identity and power. Spiritually, this is the closing of the circle. We are living in a time where the age of the fist has reached its limit, leaving the world parched and broken. The collective subconscious is reaching back into the African soil, looking for that original Maat, the balance that only the matriarch could provide. It's a bit ironic that the very people the world tried to civilize are now the ones holding the blueprint for the world's survival. They are the guardians of the earth currents that we desperately need to reconnect with. But this reawakening isn't without its battles. The structures of the new world are terrified of a power they can't tax, track, or tame. The conflict has moved from the battlefield to the mind, with media and dogma trying to frame this ancestral pride as regression. Yet every time a woman traces her DNA back to that mitochondrial Eve, or a community returns to the wisdom of the circle, the matriarch's throne gets a little bit sturdier. The forbidden queen is no longer a secret. She's becoming the future. Beneath the shifting dunes of the deepest desert, there is a throne that was never truly surrendered. It isn't made of the stolen wealth of conquered nations, but carved from the white bone of ancient giants and inlaid with the soft gold that the matriarchs considered the sweat of the sun. It's a bit of a cosmic joke that we've spent centuries digging for oil and minerals, while the most valuable artifact on the continent, the literal seat of human sovereignty, remains untouched because we forgot how to look with our souls instead of our shovels. The mystery of the empty throne is that it doesn't belong to a person, but to a frequency. The legend says the crown will only reappear when the descendants of the queen stop trying to fit into the structures of their oppressors and start listening to the heartbeat of the land again. The secret is that the throne isn't lost, it's waiting. It's a bit of a slap in the face to modern authorities to realize that their power is temporary and hollow compared to the silent, enduring legitimacy of the one who ruled before the first king was even born. To find this place would be a sensory epiphany. The air would vibrate with the low-frequency hum of the singing stones, and the smell of ancient incense, untouched for 10,000 years, would awaken memories you didn't know you had. You would see the bone gold crown glowing in the dark, not as a piece of jewelry, but as a living halo of light. This is the visual proof that the dark continent was always the source of the world's light, a sanctuary where the original balance of the universe is kept in a state of perfect frozen readiness. Spiritually, the empty throne represents potentiality. It is the reminder that the story of Africa isn't a tragedy of what was lost, but a prophecy of what is yet to come. The matriarch left her seat vacant on purpose, knowing that humanity would need to experience the age of the blade to finally appreciate the age of the womb. It's a bit ironic that we look at ruins and see death, when these ruins are actually the seeds of a future that hasn't even begun to bloom yet. As we reach the end of this journey, the conflict remains. Will we continue to ignore the shadow of the Forbidden Queen, or will we have the courage to dust off the throne? The sand is starting to move, and the wind is carrying the scent of rain to the desert once more. The bone gold crown is waiting for a head that understands that power isn't about ruling over others, but about returning to the source. The throne is empty, but the queen has never been more present. The echoes of the Forbidden Queen do not end here, because her story is not carved in stone alone. It is written in the very pulse of your veins. We have traveled from the lush, forgotten savannas of a green Sahara to the silent, vibrating crystal caves, uncovering a lineage of power that was never truly broken, only hidden beneath the weight of time and sand. As we close this sacred record, remember that the Forbidden Queen is more than a ghost of history. She is the blueprint for a world in balance, a reminder that true sovereignty is nurtured, not conquered. The desert is shifting, and the ancient truths are rising once again to meet a generation that is no longer afraid of its own shadow. The throne may sit empty in the physical world, but its frequency is calling to those who have the ears to hear. This journey through the hidden heart of Africa is a testament to the resilience of the spirit and the immortality of the mother's legacy. Many more mysteries still sleep beneath the dunes, waiting for the right moment to be whispered to the world. Do not let the flame of this revelation go out. If you felt the resonance of the ancestors today, show your respect for the past by subscribing and activating the notifications. Our journey into the forbidden and the forgotten is only just beginning, and you won't want to miss the next secret we unearth together.